Hey guys, I need to do a clarification on the video I did yesterday. I had a person email me to ask for this clarification, and it was a really good question. And normally when I do the videos where I talk about not thinking about the ex and basically phasing them out of your mind and not looking at what they're doing, typically I'm saying that in the context that they're not doing anything significantly dangerous or bad to your kids. Kind of like I call it the 911 test, right? If your ex isn't doing anything that puts your kids' lives in danger or serious harm, then you phase it out, right? And that's pretty much what I mean by that. And normally whenever I talk about it, I do a caveat which says that, right? That I'm not talking about your ex doing something that's illegal or physically dangerous or putting your kids at risk. And I mean risk as in like risk of injury, bodily harm, illegal activity, stuff like that. If it's things that really wouldn't pass that test, then you're better off not looking at it, right? You're better off at just kind of doing that black hole thinking so that you're not beating yourself up. And this is where the dichotomy is on this, because it's tough because there's a nuance to it. Well, let me back up. There can be a nuance, and then there's a clear black and white. So you have your white, your gray, and your black. And what you need to think about on it is, where does your situation fall? So if you're dealing in a situation where things are seriously wrong, the kids are being neglected in a way that could potentially be criminal, or it puts them at risk, if they're letting them be around drugs or alcohol or firearms unattended, or things like that. And if you're in that situation, obviously you don't turn a blind eye to that, because that's serious. Although there's a caveat. I mean, there's a fine line with that as well, because I could make the argument that there was a period of time, which I think is still happening, that my ex has unattended firearms around the kids. There's no way they're locked up. Is it worth it for me to try to get someone else involved? Well, it's been 6 years. I never did, and nothing's happened. Now, I guess technically if something did happen, I probably would feel that I should have done something more. But so that's the thing. You have to take an objective look at what your situation is and basically what the right course of action is. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what that right course of action would be. One of the things we talk about constantly is documentation. Now, if you have a situation where you have documentation of significant failures in this area, then you do need to keep looking at that information. You do need to document it. You don't want to put yourself in, bury your head in the sand whenever it's this particular situation. Now, the person that was talking to me about this and asked the question, because they asked for clarification, because they're like, hey, I looked at your other video and I see what you're saying, but, I mean, there's serious things going on, right? And I was like, yep, they're absolutely right. And I needed to address that. So then you're stuck in the situation of this, is document everything you possibly can to try to establish that pattern of behavior. Potentially, you can call Child Protective Services or law enforcement if you need to. The problem with the moves you make, and if you have an attorney, I would strongly suggest you consult with them for your best course of action, because the fundamental truth of family court is they don't believe anybody. And I've known a lot of people through the course of dealing with them through this channel where they've been in this situation where something significant has happened. I've talked to people who've had inappropriate touching that, they press the alarm and got Child Protective Services involved. In the one situation that's on the top of my head, the person's child was too young to really articulate what happened, so everything was thrown out. Nothing, basically when they went to court, the family court just said, okay, it's all bull. They felt that it was all not legitimate and threw it out, and nothing happened. And that's the real risk on this, is you have to be careful on I'm not saying don't try to do something, but you have to be careful how it comes across. Because if people, like, okay, for instance, if you call Child Protective Services and they do an investigation and they come back and they say that it's unwarranted or they did not find any problems, then you're going to have a professional third party who is basically invalidating what you're saying. And I can guarantee you not guarantee you, I would strongly not suggest, but it would not surprise me if you go into court with that type of information. The judge is going to think that you're blowing it out of proportion, that you're both being knuckleheads, and probably do shared care or not take it seriously. So the thing on that is when you're dealing in these situations, you have to be really careful of how you present the information. Because if it doesn't come across as legitimate or genuine, they're not going to believe it. For instance, in my situation, my going in position when I started this for me was, even though I knew there was problems, I felt that if I tried to go for full custody, that it would be, there's no way in my mind I could wrap around an argument that didn't make it, that I would not come across that I was just being vindictive and just being one of those angry dads that was just trying to do that for no apparent reason. Now, keep in mind, as I've mentioned in the past, most of my family are my father's retired cop, my brother's a active deputy sheriff, my mom's retired deputy sheriff. I grew up around law enforcement. When I talk with them about all of this, basically they validated that same reality that, nobody really believes anybody, everybody's lying. So you really have a tough time trying to validate that. Now, if you go back and you look at the interview I did with Joe Cordell from Cordell, he talked about how to build that evidence and how you had to communicate it for that reason, right? Because if you don't come across as genuine, if they think that you are just embellishing or taking it out of context or just trying to trash the other parent to win, they're going to look at it like it's not legitimate. And you have to be really careful about that, because that is what can get you in trouble. And when that happens, two things happen. One, if they really think that you're playing a game, that can backfire on you. I think the more typical response is they think that the level of problems that you're trying to document aren't really that bad. They look at it and they're going to say, okay, well, are the kids really in danger? Are they, is it a legitimate danger? And if the answer is no, or if they think or they strongly suspect that it's not, then they're going to typically err on a more equal care. So on that, to back up, if you're dealing with those type of situations and you feel like your kids are in danger and you feel like this is a significant risk to their life and limb, then you still have to pay attention. And then on that, if you go to court and it's basically ignored, then you have to make the decision of, is it really as bad as you think? And if it is, then you continue to document, you continue to try to get the information, you continue to press on. And if it's not, then you start migrating to that black hole thinking to where you just get it out of your head. If you're, so there's some gray area there and there's some not gray area. But I mean, at the end of the day, if your kids are at risk, and the other caveat on this is if your kids are at risk and they're asking you for help and let's say that they're giving you the information and taking pictures of what's going on at the other house and are willing to basically tell the judge that they don't want to be around that environment, then you can go that route. The problem is a lot of times what will happen is the kids won't say that they don't want to be around the other person. They'll say, well, I feel safer with dad or I feel safer with mom, but I still want to see the other parent. So it's a really complicated situation. You have to be, every situation is unique and you have to be really, careful how you address it, how you approach it, and have, like I said before during the live stream, the last live stream, that you have to be, have an open mind on what the realistic expectations are in court. And it's tough. I mean, my situation is relatively stable. Of course, there's things I don't like, but they don't bubble up to the level that I could really do anything about. Plus, I don't have the kids. The kids are doing everything in their power to protect their mom, which, I mean, okay. So I'm kind of trapped into what are stuck in what I think is appropriate. I don't really have a lot of options of what I can do because nothing has really risen to the level that's significant in my situation. If your situation is not that, I mean, you have to do at the end of the day what's right for you. So I wanted to make that clarification. I felt really, really bad when I was looking at that, or when I got that email. I'm like, oh man, I normally always say the caveat is the 911 test. I mean, if they're doing something that's putting your kids in danger, you obviously can't ignore that. It's whenever they're doing stuff that you may not appreciate or you may not like, or they're being around people that you don't necessarily like. You don't really have a lot of control over that. So I hope that clarifies that. If you have some more discussions on that, leave it in the comments below. If you're still confused, feel free to email me. You can do that by just going to the dadsurvivingdivorce.com website and just click the email link at the top right or in the contact page, and if you want to directly ask me a question or get some clarification. And I appreciate this particular viewer. I appreciate that they watched the video. They were like, this doesn't, I think I'm missing something, and then reached out to say, hey, this is my situation. I hear what you're saying, but what are you saying, and how does that pertain to my specific thing? And it was, I appreciate that. So anytime you guys want clarification, absolutely email me, and I can clarify it either in a video, and I did with this person. I sent them an email response as well. And on that, I'm going to shut this video down. Hopefully you're doing okay, and I will chat with you on the next video. Take care.